Hello everyone, Neural here, and today we're going to be reviewing the Bestek 1000 watt 12 volt to 110 volt power inverter. Now this is not the cheapest inverter on the market, nor is it the most expensive. It's a low to mid-priced inverter, and it has a few things that make it somewhat unique in the marketplace. So I'm going to cover those as we get to them, but first let's just take a look at it. Here's the box. It is brand new. And right away you can see one of those things that makes it somewhat unusual. This is a 1000 watt power inverter, and it comes with both cable clamps and a cigarette lighter adapter. Now this is unusual because this can only supply about 150 watts. It's a limitation of your vehicle, not the inverter, and it's curious that they chose to add that in to the package of a 1000 watt inverter. They're opening themselves up to a lot of negative feedback from people who don't really know what they're doing when they do that, but it is a somewhat nice feature to have. On the bottom they have a list of different things that they say this thing is good for. Fan, television, microwave, coffee machine. Well, most coffee machines take more than 1000 watts, but printer, shaver, MP3 player, etc. A bunch of random stuff put down here. And here they list a few random features. It's kind of curious what they put on here. MCU, not a lot of people know what an MCU is, so why do they bother putting that on the retail package? It's a microcontroller unit. Input and output isolated, they almost all are, that's nothing special. The fan is controlled by output power. Now that's actually an important feature. Sometimes when you turn the inverter on, the fan just runs full speed. It's loud and annoying and inefficient. Hopefully this one is not that way. And some other protections. It advertises it has a power switch. Alright! Anyway, so let's see, side over here, a few more random pictures that mean nothing. Over here you can see the different options that you can buy. Different input voltages, different output voltages, 50 or 60 hertz, etc. It's nice to see the different options on here. And it's also curious to note that they have all of this on here with 60 hertz, 12 volts in, 110 out, but the box shows the exact one that I got. So I don't know if that means that if you buy one of these other units that has a different outlet or different configuration, if they change the picture in the box or not. It's just kind of interesting, makes me wonder. And over here you can see the model number, MRI 10011. So this is a box. Let's take a look at the text on the back. This is the back of the box, and some of you may be wondering why I'm spending so much time showing the box. Well, it's because a lot of times the box really can tell you about the quality of the product inside. For example here, this unit can convert the DC power provided by car, vessel, and storage battery, etc. to AC power to ensure that you can use power outdoor or at place without AC power supply. Now, sure, you know what they're trying to say here, but it's not very good English. It has a section that's Introduction, Features, Notice, and Specification. Except Notice actually contains operating instructions. I'm not sure why they call it Notice, and some of these are rather comical. Make sure to use this unit in drought place, and keep it away from high temperature, stress, tide, and dust. Okay, I'll keep it away from tide. Got some tide over here. I'll make sure to keep this thing way over here, away from the tide. When using this unit, apply the common sense of using other electric appliance. So, yeah, this doesn't have the best translation on it. You can tell what they're saying at least, which is good. And sure, we don't buy these products to look at the box. We buy them to use them, and what's important is how well they work. But oftentimes, the text on the box gives a good indication of how much money and time they spent on the product inside, in terms of its construction and its engineering. If we look down here at the specification section, rated power 1000 watts, max power 1200 watts. And this is another one of those interesting things about this inverter. They have a 1000 watt rating on the box, yet on the back they say max power 1200. And they also say a surge power of 2100 watts if you look on the internet. But like always, 2100 watts isn't going to be true, it never is on these units. But does this mean that you can run 1200 watts for a short time before it overheats, or what does that really mean? It's kind of interesting, and I wanted to take a look at that. And here, converter efficiency, 91%. If it's really 91%, then this inverter is pretty efficient for its cost point. That's enough of the box. Let's open it up and take a look at what's inside. And this is what's inside the box that I got. We get a little single-page manual that doesn't have a whole lot on it. However, it does have specifications. I'll just read them to you. Rated 1000 watts, max 1200 watts, peak 2400 watts. This doesn't match what's on the internet, which is kind of curious, but once again, rated 1000 watts, max 1200, and then peak 2400. What does that really mean? Does it mean that they're more honest in advertising the output power capabilities of this inverter than most low-cost ones? It's very possible. We'll find out. Miscellaneous other things on here that you're probably not interested in. I'll set this aside. I get this bag here with absolutely nothing in it. I'm not sure what was supposed to be in it. I suspect that this was supposed to be inside and that it came out in shipment. And I'll show you why in a little bit, why I think this probably came out in shipment. But this is the cigarette lighter plug that they give you. It's probably perfectly adequate for a DC power adapter in a car, and I am just curious as to what is inside here. They usually put a fuse inside these things. Let's see what they gave us for fuse. Automobiles are generally fused at 15 to 20 amps, and there does not appear to be any fuse inside of this. That is interesting. So it's relying on your vehicle to fuse this adapter, which I don't like. I think they should have a fuse inside here. In any case, it's also interesting here on this tag, they say, please make sure load is under 300 watts. Well, 300 watts is way too much. You really should keep it to 150 with one of these guys. I'm not going to actually review this particular adapter. It looks pretty standard, and the quality actually seems pretty good. But please don't try to load 300 watts on one of these things. That's where bad reviews come from, for products that don't deserve them. This can only do about 150 watts. If you do more, you could blow the fuse in your car or even damage your electrical system. A lot of times vehicles are not really fused properly for the connections and gauge of wires involved, and fusible links and such can go out instead of your actual fuse. So be careful with that, and please don't use this for 300 watts. Here are some battery clamp cables. Let's see if we can see what the manufacturer or gauge of these is. They don't appear to be labeled at all, but they are nice and flexible, so not sure how thick the wire is inside. These clamps seem to be reasonably well built. At least they included cables. These cables really don't look heavy enough for a 1000 watt inverter, but we're going to give them a test and see. Over here inside the actual clamp, not sure how well you can see that on camera, but it does appear to be well connected to these copper clamps, and they are pure copper. I applaud them for that. They are not copper plated. They are pure copper all the way through. The wires, you can see there's some oxidation here. The wires in this particular one are not very good copper. It's poor quality copper, but that's not a huge deal. We are going to test them out and see if they can really support this inverter. I suspect they'll overheat, and if you want any real power, you need to make your own cables, but we'll set those aside for now. The quality overall is pretty decent. If I got something like this with a 750 watt inverter, I'd be very pleased. So, onto the actual product. Pull it out of the box. It seems to be packaged relatively well. Should be prevented from getting too damaged in any sort of reasonable shipment. And here we are, the Bestek 1000 watt power inverter. Its construction appears to be not quite as typical as I expected. It is in a anodized aluminum case, but it does not appear to be a clamshell case. It must be. This top must come off. I'll have to take it apart and see what it looks like. But you can see on this side that there are only 2 screws on this side. Over here, there are none. So I'm curious what everything is heat-sinked to inside. This construction is a little bit atypical. Here on the input side, you get 2 studs to connect your wires to. They are plenty long to connect multiple cables. The quality of these actually seems pretty good. Rather impressed with that so far. Over here we have external fuses instead of internal. This can either be good or bad. If the inverter is properly protected inside, you shouldn't ever need to replace the fuses. On the other hand, it's not all that bad that they have these external. It looks like there are 50 amp fuses in each one of these. That's also very curious, because this is a 1000 watt inverter. Normally you would find 340 amp fuses. Here they have 350 amp fuses. 50 amps is good for, 150 amps rather, is good for approximately 1500 watts. Which makes me think that this may actually be able to do 1200 watts for a short amount of time before it overheats. Which would be pretty impressive because this is a 1000 watt advertised inverter. That's unusual for low-cost inverters. Normally they overpromise and underdeliver. But we'll see what this one does. On the other side, you've got a couple of outlets. I haven't tested them to know what kind of quality these outlets are yet, but we'll take a look at that. On-off switch. That rocker switch seems to be reasonably well made. So, before we go any further, I'm going to do the first thing that I always do with these before I power them up. And that is void the warranty. So I'll get my screwdriver. Let's open it up and see what it looks like. Now the thing I want to mention is I want to open it up partly because this thing rattles. And it feels like there's something inside that should not be that loose. And I suspect that's because of the poor packaging. It really got thrown around in shipment, and that's probably why it rattles. So I want to take it apart anyway just to make sure that nothing broke loose in shipment. If you're curious, this is how this particular inverter arrived in the mail. There is not anywhere near as much packaging in here as there should be. And this got thrown around pretty badly. If there's anything broken off inside or loose, I wouldn't necessarily blame the assembly of it. We'll reserve judgment on that because it really wasn't shipped properly. One quick note on these fuses. It's nice that they're external for one reason at least, and that is because this adapter they give you does not appear to be fused. So what you can do over here is pop out these 350 amp fuses and just stick in a regular automotive 20 amp fuse. And now you have a fused adapter. I would highly recommend doing that if you're going to be using this in your vehicle. It is nice though that this is relatively small sized for a 1000 watt inverter, and I can see why someone might want to use something like this on their cigarette lighter adapter on occasion. But if you're doing that, you really might as well just get a smaller inverter, because this can only supply about 150 watts. Limitation of your vehicle, not of this product.